Memphis, Tennessee. A city carved by the Mississippi River, built on blues and barbecue, shaped by the hands of working people who knew how to turn something humble into something extraordinary. You have heard of Nashville hot chicken. You have heard of New Orleans gumbo. But Memphis does not just have a food scene. Memphis has a legacy, a catalog of inventions that quietly transform the way America eats, drinks, and gathers around a table. Some of these foods you eat every single week without knowing they were born right here, in the shadow of Beale Street, in church kitchens and roadside joints and downtown diners that smelled like smoke and sweet tea and something frying in a cast iron pan that had been seasoned since before your parents were born. Today, we are counting down 10 foods that Memphis gave to the world. Not foods that Memphis does well. Not foods that Memphis made famous. Foods that would not exist if not for this city. Stay with us until the end because the final entry on this list is something so deeply woven into the fabric of American food culture that most people never stop to think about where it came from. And when you find out it came from Memphis, everything is going to hit a little different. Number 10. The barbecue dry rub. If you have ever stood at a backyard grill and reached for that jar of seasoning, if you have ever bitten into a crust of caramelized spice that had nothing to do with sauce, you owe Memphis a debt you did not know you were carrying. The dry rub as a deliberate, fully developed culinary system was something that Memphis barbecue culture crystallized and pushed into the national consciousness. The epicenter of that crystallization is a restaurant on 2nd Street that has been standing since 1948. The Rendezvous. Charlie Vergos did not set out to change American food. He was running a chili parlor and he had a basement. That basement had a ventilation shaft, and one day he started cooking pork ribs over charcoal, seasoning them with a blend of Greek-influenced spices that reflected his heritage and his instincts. No sauce, no slow smoke for 14 hours. Just dry heat, dry seasoning, and the kind of confidence you only have when you know something is working. The Rendezvous dry rub became legendary, and what happened next is the thing that matters most. Memphis barbecue culture spread outward. Pitmasters trained at Memphis joints opened their own places. The Memphis in May World Championship Barbecue Cooking Contest, which began in 1978, formalized dry rub ribs as a competitive category and sent winning teams back to 49 other states carrying the gospel of seasoned meat without sauce. Today, dry rub is a default option at barbecue restaurants across the country. Every grocery store sells pre-made rub blends. Celebrity chefs write entire cookbooks organized around dry rub methodology, and all of it traces a line back to Memphis and the culture that decided sauce was optional and spice was everything. When you reach for that seasoning blend tonight, you are reaching for Memphis. When you order ribs without sauce at a restaurant you've never visited before, and the server nods like you said something correct, you are participating in a conversation that Memphis started before most of those restaurants existed. The dry rub did not just change how Memphis cooks ribs. It changed how America thinks about seasoning as an act of confidence rather than a starting point for something else. Number 9. Barbecue spaghetti. Before you make a face, understand that your reaction is exactly why this dish belongs on this list. Barbecue spaghetti is one of the most audacious food inventions in American history. A thing that should not work according to any culinary logic imported from anywhere else, and yet somehow works so completely that it has survived for decades and built a devoted following that travels to Memphis specifically to eat it. The origin belongs to Brady and Lil's Bar BQ, a Memphis institution that in the 1950s found itself with leftover barbecue and leftover pasta, and the kind of practical creativity that comes from running a restaurant on tight margins. The solution was to combine pulled pork with a barbecue-inflected tomato sauce and serve it over spaghetti noodles. It sounds like a mistake. It eats like a revelation. The key is what Memphis barbecue sauce does to a tomato base. Memphis sauce leans sweet and tangy with a vinegar backbone that cuts through fat in a way that Italian red sauce simply does not. When you fold pulled pork into that sauce and let it reduce until the pork absorbs the liquid, and the sauce thickens around the pasta, you get something with a depth of flavor that neither component could achieve alone. The smoke perfumes everything. The fat enriches the sauce. The vinegar keeps the whole thing from becoming heavy. Barbecue spaghetti is now served at multiple Memphis restaurants, featured on national food television, and it represents something important about Memphis food culture specifically, which is a willingness to ignore received wisdom about what belongs together and just cook what makes sense in the moment. Memphis did not have culinary gatekeepers telling them spaghetti and barbecue were incompatible. Memphis had hungry people and good pork and the freedom to experiment. The result is a dish that belongs to no other city on earth. Number 8. The peanut butter and banana sandwich. You know this sandwich. You know who made it famous. But the peanut butter and banana sandwich does not get enough credit as a Memphis food invention because people file it under Elvis curiosity rather than culinary contribution, and that is a mistake. Elvis and Memphis together created a platform, a megaphone, a global spotlight aimed at a humble regional sandwich that had existed in Southern cooking for years before anyone famous ate it. The specific Elvis version, sometimes fried in butter, sometimes with bacon added, served on white bread, dense and sweet and rich and completely indulgent, became a cultural artifact that sparked a broader American comfort with the peanut butter and banana pairing that influences food products to this day. You can find peanut butter and banana protein bars, smoothies, pancake mixes, ice cream flavors, and restaurant menu items across the country. Every single one of those products exists within a commercial landscape shaped by the Memphis-born mythology around this sandwich. The Arcade restaurant in Memphis, the oldest cafe in the city and a place where Elvis himself was a regular, still serves a fried peanut butter and banana sandwich. Tourists eat it as a pilgrimage. Locals eat it because it is genuinely delicious. Memphis had a food culture that embraced richness and sweetness and indulgence without apology, where frying something in butter was not excess but hospitality. And the peanut butter and banana sandwich is the most famous expression of that value in the world. Number 7. The Memphis wet rib. We talked about the dry rub, but the story of Memphis barbecue is a story of two philosophies in constant, productive tension. Memphis also perfected the wet rib, the rack of pork ribs slow smoked over hickory, and then basted with a sauce applied during the final stages of cooking, so it caramelizes into the crust without burning, creating a lacquered exterior that shatters when you bite through it and gives way to meat so tender it barely requires teeth. This is different from Kansas City ribs, which tend to be saucier and sweeter, different from Texas ribs, which prioritize smoke and beef, different from Carolina ribs, which lean heavily on vinegar. Memphis wet ribs occupy a specific point in the spectrum that no other city claimed first. And the characteristics of that point, the particular ratio of sweet to tart, the way hickory smoke interacts with the spice rub before the sauce goes on, the tradition of serving ribs with white bread and pickle slices that dates to the working class origins of the whole tradition. These things are distinctly Memphian. Restaurants like Cozy Corner, which opened in 1977 and has been run by the same family ever since, kept the tradition pure while other cities developed their own variations. When food critics and culinary historians write about the geography of American barbecue, they draw a map. And Memphis sits on that map as the point where pork ribs became an art form with two distinct expressions, the dry rub on one side and the wet glaze on the other. Memphis invented both. And the tension between them, the ongoing debate inside Memphis itself about which approach is superior, dry or wet, sauce or no sauce, is itself a kind of cultural engine that has kept the city thinking seriously about barbecue for 3/4 of a century. That productive argument is part of what Memphis gave to American food. The idea that barbecue is worth arguing about with complete sincerity and total passion. Number 6. The Delta Hot Tamale. If you drive through the Mississippi Delta and stop at a roadside stand or a church fundraiser, you are going to encounter tamales. Not the Mexican tamale exactly, though that is where the tradition began. The Delta Hot Tamale is a specific regional variation, smaller and spicier, and cooked differently, and deeply connected to the history of the Mississippi River corridor. Memphis sits at the northern end of that corridor, the city where the tamale trade has flourished for over a century, where tamale carts were a fixture of the downtown landscape as early as the 1900s, where the food crossed racial and cultural lines in a time when almost everything else was segregated. The Delta Hot Tamale likely arrived through Mexican laborers who came to work the cotton fields in the early 20th century and brought their food traditions with them. Those traditions were adopted and transformed by the African American communities of the Delta into something entirely new. The Delta tamale is made with a coarser cornmeal than its Mexican predecessor. It is spicier. It is cooked in its husk in large pots of boiling liquid rather than steamed. In Memphis, it became a street food sold from carts and restaurant windows, a food that belonged to the community rather than to any single culture. Hicks Barbecue in Memphis has served tamales alongside barbecue for generations. The Memphis tamale, the specific spiced, boiled, Delta-style tamale you can still find today, is a food that exists nowhere else in quite the same form. Born from the convergence of cultures that the Mississippi River made inevitable, and that Memphis shaped into a lasting tradition. Number 5. Comeback sauce. You may know this as the sauce that appears at every table in certain Memphis restaurants without being asked for. A pinkish, creamy, tangy, slightly spicy condiment that goes on salads and sandwiches and fried chicken and onion rings and, frankly, anything else you put in front of it. The origin of comeback sauce traces to Greek immigrants who settled in the Mid-South region and opened restaurants that developed the sauce in the early 20th century. But Memphis took it, embraced it, spread it, and became one of the primary cities through which comeback sauce entered the broader Southern food vocabulary. The base is mayonnaise and ketchup with additions that vary by maker, but typically include chili sauce, Worcestershire, lemon juice, garlic, paprika, and black pepper. The result is a sauce that is simultaneously familiar and complex, something you feel like you have always known even if you were tasting it for the first time. In Memphis, comeback sauce appears at barbecue joints alongside the expected red sauce, at soul food restaurants, at the kind of family-owned diners where the menu has not changed since 1974 and the waitress calls you baby whether you are 6 or 60. The sauce became so associated with the Mid-South food corridor that it is now commercially bottled and distributed nationally. You can find it in grocery stores across the country. But if you eat it in Memphis at a table with a paper placemat and a glass of sweet tea that is sweeter than anything you have ever drunk in your life, it tastes like it belongs somewhere specific. That somewhere is here. Number 4. The fried bologna sandwich. Not the bologna sandwich in the generic sense. The fried bologna sandwich as a Memphis institution, as a specific preparation that elevated a processed meat from a children's lunch fallback into something food lovers drive across state lines to experience. Memphis has a relationship with bologna that is unlike any other American city's relationship with any other processed meat product. It is not ironic. It is not nostalgic in the eye-rolling sense. It is genuinely, sincerely devoted. The preparation is straightforward and perfect. A thick-cut slice of bologna, sometimes a 1/4 inch thick, is scored across the face in a crosshatch pattern and placed on a hot griddle until the edges curl and the scored areas bubble up and develop deep brown caramelization that transforms the flavor from processed and flat to smoky and rich, and just complex enough to make you think. That slice goes on white bread, sometimes with mustard, sometimes with onion, sometimes with nothing but the meat and the bread, because nothing more is needed. The fried bologna sandwich lives at the intersection of Memphis working-class food heritage, the tradition of making something extraordinary from something cheap, and the barbecue culture that treats heat and caramelization as sacred tools rather than accidents. You can find elevated versions at Memphis restaurants, serving it as nostalgic tribute. You can find the original at corner stores and gas stations where it has never stopped being made exactly the same way it was made in 1965. Every food journalist who writes about Memphis eventually finds it. And every time they do, the story is the same. They expected to be amused and they were transformed. Memphis fried bologna is not a joke. It is a masterpiece disguised as a cheap sandwich, and it was born right here. Number 3. Barbecue nachos. If you have been to a Memphis barbecue restaurant in the last 30 years and did not order the barbecue nachos, you made a mistake you are going to correct immediately after this video ends. Barbecue nachos are tortilla chips loaded with pulled pork, barbecue sauce, shredded cheese, sour cream, and jalapenos, assembled in the same layered fashion as traditional nachos, but with the entire flavor profile shifted by the presence of smoked meat and Memphis-style sauce. The specific origin of barbecue nachos as a menu item belongs to Memphis, and specifically to the Germantown Commissary, a historic general store turned barbecue restaurant that has been feeding the Mid-South since 1981. The commissary put pulled pork on chips because they had both available and because the people of Memphis were not the kind of people who worried about whether two foods belonged together, if the combination was going to taste good. It tasted more than good. Word spread the way word spreads in a food-obsessed city, through church circles and office conversations, and the kind of urgent personal recommendation that sounds like you are giving someone a gift. Barbecue nachos spread to other Memphis restaurants, then to barbecue restaurants across the South, then to stadium concession stands where they now appear at sporting events in cities that have no idea they are eating a Memphis invention. The next time you see barbecue nachos on a menu anywhere in the country, understand that you are looking at a Memphis export, a local improvisation that became a national standard without anyone ever announcing the transition. Number 2. The sweet tea standard. Sweet tea existed before Memphis. No reasonable person claims otherwise. Tea, sugar, and southern summers created the drink long before any one city could claim it. But Memphis did something specific with sweet tea that no other city quite replicated with the same intensity. Memphis made sweet tea so systematically, so uniformly, and so non-negotiably sweet that it became a benchmark against which all other southern sweet tea is measured. Memphis sweet tea is not sweet in the way that a dessert is sweet. It is sweet in the way that a commitment is strong. The sugar goes in while the tea is still hot, dissolving completely into the liquid rather than settling at the bottom, creating a unified syrup tea that no amount of stirring could reproduce if you tried to add sugar after the fact. Memphis restaurants do not offer unsweetened tea as a default. You ask for unsweetened tea in Memphis the way you ask for a menu item that is not on the menu. The staff will bring it, but you will be looked at with mild concern, as if perhaps you did not understand what city you were in. The Memphis sweet tea standard spread through the region alongside Memphis food culture, carried by the same channels that spread the barbecue and the tamales and the comeback sauce. It became a hospitality signal, a way of communicating that you were serious about feeding people, that you understood the connection between sweetness and welcome. In Memphis, sweet tea is not a beverage. It is a greeting. Number 1. The cheeseburger culture. We have arrived at the most debated food origin story in American culinary history, and we are planting a flag firmly in Memphis. The cheeseburger origin is contested, with multiple cities making legitimate claims. But what is not contested is what Memphis did with the cheeseburger that no other city did in quite the same way. Memphis built a civilization around it. Dyer's Burgers, which claims to have been frying burgers in the same grease since 1912, because the oil is filtered daily and never fully replaced, creating a flavor accumulation unlike anything else in American fast food, represents a Memphis relationship to the burger that is obsessive, specific, and completely its own. Dyer's grease has been transported in an armored vehicle with a police escort. This is not a metaphor. When Dyer's moved locations in 1997, they transported their century-old cooking oil in an armored car with officers riding alongside because losing that oil would have meant losing the continuity of flavor that defines what Dyer's is. No other city in America has done this. No other city in America would do this. Only Memphis loves its burger enough to give its cooking fat a police escort. Huey's, which opened in 1970 and has been voted best burger in Memphis more times than anyone has counted, built a culture of expectation around what a burger should be that influenced restaurants across the region. The Memphis burger culture, the insistence that the patty matters and the grind matters and the bun matters and the char matters, spread through the food media and through the chefs who trained in Memphis and carried its standards with them. It helped build the modern American premium burger movement, the movement that turned the cheeseburger from a disposable fast food item into something worth studying, worth traveling for, worth protecting. Memphis did not just invent a menu item. Memphis invented a way of caring about that menu item, and that is the most Memphis thing on this entire list. 10 foods, 1 city, a river running through it, and a smoke pit burning on every block. Memphis is not a city that talks about its contributions particularly loudly. It is more interested in actually feeding you than in explaining why you should be grateful for being fed. But the debt is real. Every time you bite into a dry rubbed rib at a barbecue joint in any state, Memphis is in that bite. Every time barbecue nachos appear on a menu and you do not even stop to think about where that combination came from because it feels like it has always existed, that is what a successful invention looks like. It disappears into the culture so completely that people forget it had a beginning. Memphis gave these foods their beginnings, and the most important thing about a beginning is that it keeps going. The Rendezvous is still open. Dyer's is still frying in that oil. The Germantown commissary is still piling pulled pork onto chips. The tamale windows are still steaming. The sweet tea is still being poured without asking whether you want it sweet. Memphis is still cooking. Drop a comment and tell us which of these 10 surprised you most. And if you have eaten at any of the places we mentioned, we want to hear about it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the foods that built this country one city at a time. Thanks for watching. Stay hungry, stay curious, keep rising, and the next time someone asks you where great American food comes from, tell them to look at a map and find the river.